tendency to sometimes start off on the wrong foot with someone, or we sometimes seem to butt heads with someone or rub someone the wrong way. That's a part of human interaction, human relations. That's a part of interpersonal relationships that sometimes don't always end up so positive. Yeah, is where individuals sometimes butt heads, or they end up rubbing one another the wrong way, and or end up offending someone, and so on and so forth. And so in these instances, we find that individuals sometimes have a hard way of dealing with this. So whether it is a parent to a child, whether it is a spouse to their spouse, their significant other, whether it is between siblings, whether it is between family members, immediate family members, extended family members, and friends, or co-workers, or even neighbors. This seems to be a ongoing reality that sometimes people just get off on the wrong foot. Sometimes people just say something and do something that offends another individual. And it's not always intentional. It's not that they are looking for a reason to be at odds with another person. It's just a part of life. It's just a part of individuals and human beings interacting one with another, and sometimes it just happens. How do we deal with it? How do we handle when those things happen? Because what I discovered, my brothers and my sisters, if we do not deal with it, if we don't handle it, there's at least two things that will happen. One is, when we don't deal with it, the rift that exists between individuals, what ends up happening is it will disrupt fellowship, and it could destroy friendships. Are y'all awake today? That's what happens, is when we have odds with another individual, when we get off on the wrong foot, when we rub someone the wrong way, or offend someone, or just have crosswords, and or whatever the case may be, if we don't deal with it, if we don't handle it, and do it in a responsible manner, what could end up happening is it can disrupt fellowship and or destroy friendships. Now, I'm not telling you what I've heard. I'm telling you what I know. I'm telling you what I've witnessed with my own eyes, and I'm telling you what I've experienced in my own life. Is that we find ourselves not handling things appropriately and or responsibly. And we find ourselves losing out on valuable relationships and exchanges between someone, family member, friend, whatever the case may be, and that ends up disrupting the fellowship. So let me give you an example. Let me expound on that, if you would allow me to, for a few moments. Just imagine two individuals that have had or have a really good relationship. They hang out, they do things together, they talk on a regular basis, they share important memories and moments in one another's life. And then something happens. Sometimes it could be something that is minor, or sometimes it could be something that may be major. But whatever it is, and whatever end of the pendulum you find yourself, minor or major, or anything in between, somewhere in the middle, something happens that causes them to now disrupt that fellowship or to disrupt that flow. And so all of a sudden there's this strain that exists between those individuals. Or there's this stress that now exists between these individuals, and therefore the fellowship has been disrupted. So now the calls are less frequent. The outings and or the gatherings are less frequent. The conversations are more superficial. We no longer talk about things that are of depth, or things that are too personal, or things that would normally be a part of our day-to-day flow, interaction, and discussion, and so on and so forth. Something has happened. And that something that has happened is the fellowship has been disrupted because we have not dealt with the infraction, or we have not dealt with whatever occurred between the two of you. And so as a result, what ends up happening is marriages dissolve, families break up, siblings become rivals, friends become associates, and on and on and on and on and on. And so we end up missing out on what could have been and or what used to be a beautiful, healthy, and happy union. But now it is no longer such because we didn't deal with it. So it disrupts fellowship, but it also destroys families. So as I stated, couples will split, siblings will engage in rivalries. You'll have parents and children who stop speaking to one another, who disown one another, who avoid one another. And now that family unit, or that union, whatever the context may be, is now strained and stressed, and the friendship dissipates and disappears and is ultimately destroyed. We end up, my brothers and my sisters, allowing the enemy to come in between us and disrupt that fellowship and destroy friendships and to destroy families. And it's a sad reality. It's sad to watch and to witness it happen in real time. And when I thought about that, I couldn't help but to think about Jacob and Esau. Two brothers who were birthed by the same parents. As a matter of fact, these were fraternal twins. And they shared the womb together at the same time. And even while they were in the womb of their mother, there was rift between the two of them inside the womb. It didn't, that rift didn't wait until they were born, and didn't wait until they began to grow up and begin to learn how to walk and to talk and negotiate and any of that. No, it started even inside the womb. And as this rift existed between the two, even when one was being born, here you have the other holding on to his ankle. It continued during birth and after birth. So here it is. Esau is exiting out of the birth canal. And there you have Jacob holding on to his heel. You can try to sermonize that and exegete it all you want to. I don't know that any of us know exactly what that meant and why it happened, whether it was Jacob trying to prevent him from being first, or whether it was him trying to prevent him from being born, period, or whether it was him trying to, hold him back in life, or whatever the case may be. I mean, you can go on and on with possible meanings of what that actually meant or what it represented. Well, all we do know is that the rift that started inside the womb continued on even during and after birth. And so you have this brother who's holding on. Now, what is a plausible interpretation is one that I kind of believe that is the scenario or is a representation of what really happened, because when you read the story of these two, where the firstborn would inherit the birthrights and inherit the blessings by being the firstborn, perhaps it was Jacob giving us a preview of what was to come, because we know that Jacob ended up usurping the cycle and the authority. He ended up stealing Esau's birthright That's what created the tension between the two as they grew older in the first place. And for me, that seems to be more of a plausible interpretation because it gives us insight into what really was going on between these brothers. But that's not my beef today. That's not my focus today. I just want to show you as we walk through this interaction that took place between these two brothers. And so throughout the course of their life, there was this back and forth, and there was this competition, and there was this rivalry that existed. And it ultimately ended with Jacob offending Esau to the point that Esau said, if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to kill my brother Jacob. Wow. Blood brothers, fraternal twins, shared the womb at the same time. But they had oughts and beef and rift between the two of them that was so deep that they didn't handle, that it got so bad that Esau says, I'm going to kill my brother. So their mother, getting wind of that and getting whiff of it, she instructed Jacob to flee and to go and stay with her brother Laban. And it was there that Jacob ran for his life, literally, and where he changed his life and where he left his former life. And it was there, living underneath the house, the covering of Laban, for 20 years. That's where he found himself. And what struck me and what really gets my attention in the context of our message today is that it is in this scenario, it is in these situations, my brothers and my sisters, that we have individuals who run from their pain and they run from their past. And in doing so, they end up running from their purpose. Preach, Pastor Sanders. I promise you, I'm doing the best I can. This is good already. I'm starting to feel this thing now. He ran from his pain. He ran from his past and inadvertently ended up running from his purpose. And so here he is in Laban's house. And for 20 years, he didn't see his brother. For 20 years, he didn't talk to his brother. For 20 years, he and his brother are at odds, and this union has been disrupted. Oh, I think I'm speaking to someone here today, whether you are listening here in the sanctuary, or whether you're watching by way of social media or cyberspace or whatever. But I'm speaking to someone. I've got a sneaky suspicion that I'm rolling down someone's alley today, because you've got some folk in your life that you've had some rifts, you've had some situations and some scenarios that have gone south. Some people that you've rubbed the wrong way. Some people that you have crossed hairs or crossed paths with, and it wasn't a pleasant experience and or encounter. And because you didn't deal with it, the way you chose to handle it was to allow this beef to turn into a barrier. That barrier prevented you from being in fellowship with them. And that barrier prevented them from being in fellowship with you. And it strained and stressed the friendship. And it strained and stressed the family connection and union. And so there you are, content, living on your side of town. They living on their side of town. You're content with not picking up the phone and calling them. And they're just as content with not picking up the phone and calling you. There's no longer Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas gift exchanges. No more courtesies extended on birthdays and holidays and Mother's Days and Father's Days and all these days. No, instead, we go on with our lives as if they don't exist. And we live our lives content with that. My brothers and my sisters, is a sad reality, because many of us are missing out on the manifold blessings that could come about because of that union. And especially painful is it when this is someone that you used to have great friendship with. someone that you used to have great fellowship with, someone that you used to consider and call family. But instead now, again, you find yourself on your side of the street and they on their side of the street. And y'all no longer cross paths and you're content with it. And here you are running from your pain, running from your past, and running from your purpose. Because I've discovered that we don't meet people by accident. Yeah, I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe in happenstance. I believe everything is of divine providence. That God orchestrates the circumstances of our lives where we go where we go and we meet who we meet for a reason. Now, while yet some relationships are for a season, most relationships and all relationships do have a reason. There's a reason why I met you. There's a reason why you met me. If we want to do a survey of our church, majority of our members here don't live within a mile radius of this church. Most people drive a few miles to get here. And between your house and God's house, this house in particular, there's a plethora of churches that you pass. And you pass by all those churches to come to this church. That was not by accident. That was not by happenstance. It was not by accident that those who are here today came here today. Amen. God obviously wanted you to hear this message. God knows and knew that you needed to hear this message. Everything is by design. And so, my brothers and my sisters, we need to understand and realize that we cross paths with people for a reason. And so, since I met you, God, what are you up to? What are you up to? What is it that you want Thomas and I to glean from one another? What is it that you want Lisa and I to do together in life for the community and or for the kingdom? Why is it that you allowed Brother Larry and I to establish a friendship? For what reason, for what purpose in God's kingdom was it that you allowed John and I to forge a friendship? What are you up to, God? We must understand and realize that God is working through the circumstances of our lives, and God is working through the people that cross our paths, and he's working through our unions because God is trying to do something, and there's certain things that can't be done and won't be done the way that they're supposed to be done until we allow ourselves to be in good fellowship with one another, and we begin to use our unions for a reason and for the purposes of God. And so when something disrupts that, or when something destroys that, it now diminishes what God could do and wanted to do through the two of you. Preach on, Pastor Sam. Amen. And so that's what we have. We have a whole lot of folk who are missing out on life, missing out on opportunities, missing out on things that God could do and wants to do through you and others because we've allowed these little rifts and stuff to get in our way, and we have refused to deal with it. Well, guess what, baby Bob? You in a good place today because we're going to deal with it. We're going to handle this. No longer will you live in Laban's house while your brother, sister, whomever is all the way on the other side of town, if you will, living opposite lives. No. There's a connection you had. These were two brothers, fraternal twins. Ain't nobody supposed to come in between fraternal twins. But yet, something had come between the two of them and separated them. My brothers and my sisters, what I've discovered is that in order to make it right and to deal with it, there has to be a willingness on both ends to reconcile. And the sad reality is, in many instances, folk are not willing to reconcile. Or in some instances, one is willing and the other is not. But we have to be willing to reconcile, and I want to challenge you and charge you that beyond your own personal feelings and your hang-ups and your hiccups with your brother or your sister, beyond that, you ought to look at the bigger picture. You ought to look at the kingdom, and you ought to, like Jesus said when in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he was confronted and conflicted with dealing with destiny and all that it entailed, and he said, at the end of the day, it's not about me, it's not my will, but it's about you, Lord. Thy will be done. And so we ought to ultimately say, Lord, your will be done. So even though I'm hurt, even though I'm offended and I've been afflicted, Lord, it's about your will, and I want to reconcile. And so, God, I'm asking you to lead the way. And what I'm asking you, God, is to work on their heart as you are working on my heart, so that when our hearts come together, we can have a heart-to-heart and we can reconcile. That's what we got to do. We ought not be content with leaving it as is. So, God, help us to reconcile. Watch this. And so when we have a willingness, unfortunately, when people don't have a willingness to reconcile, what it does is it prevents, things from happening that are positive and productive. And what happens, my brothers and my sisters, is, something that really stunts that or stops that, watch this, is one's inability or one's failure, watch me now, for those who are taking note, one's failure to take ownership, or one's failure to take accountability, or one's failure to take responsibility. Well, if this ain't good to nobody else, it's good to me. Your failure to take ownership is you saying, it ain't me, it's you. It ain't me, it's you. I ain't got the problem, you the problem. I just want to let you know that folk like this make me itch. Folk like this really irritate me like a rash, because they can never take ownership. It's always about you. These are people who I call puppets. They're puppets, because they say, really in a real sense, that the reason why they act the way they act is because you do the things that you do. So in other words, what you're saying is you're a puppet. You're saying that you're not in control of your actions. You're not in control of your speech, your attitude, or any of that. So you're running around like Pinocchio, and you're being puppeted. Is that the word? Can we use that? It's going to be used today. You're being puppeted, and you're being controlled and manipulated and influenced by someone else. Someone else, a puppeteer, is pulling the strings. If you've ever seen a masterful puppeteer who has a puppet on strings, and as they masterfully move their fingers, they can control the hand and the arm and the feet and the legs and the head and the body of the puppet, and the puppet moves in a masterful way, looking just like a human who would move on their own. But what you don't see in many instances is the strings that's being controlled by the puppeteer. Come here, let me tell you something. Some folk are listening to me that fall up under the sound of my voice. You're nothing more than a puppet on strings being controlled by a puppeteer when you don't take ownership, because you're saying it ain't my fault, it's your fault, and I only do what I say, I only act this way, I only communicate and behave this way because it is in response and in reaction to you. Yeah. So folk don't take ownership. Well, watch this. Secondly, folk not only refuse to take ownership, but folk refuse to take accountability. Now, just like taking ownership, you're saying, I'm owning this. It's my behavior. There may have been something that you did, but there also is something that I've done as well. My reaction, just because you said what you said, does not give me license to say what I say. I'm in control of what I say. I can't control what you say. I can't control what you do. I can't control how you act and how you treat me. And though it may have been foul, and though you may have got underneath my skin and you may have got on my last nerves, it does not give me license and freedom to just spout out and or to react and or to attack and do what I do. Yeah. I don't just have free will. I still made that choice. So it's ownership. I own that. Yes, you did that, but yes, I did this. You got to be careful with folks who point the finger, because there's three fingers pointing back at them. You know, and I tried to be slick as a youngster growing up, and people would say, you know, that what I just said to you. So I start pointing like this. All fingers. No, it don't work like that. When you point, whether it's one finger or all fingers, guess what? There's still some ownership that you must take. Amen. And so ownership and accountability. Accountability is you saying, I not only own my behavior, I'm being held, and I am allowing myself to be held accountable. Accountable. So when someone comes to me and says, yeah, I did this, and yeah, this happened, but I'm holding you accountable because you still have a responsibility to be godly. You still have a responsibility to be good. You know, let us not be weary in well doing, but you know, can keep on doing good. You don't get a pass. No, you still supposed to be good and do good and let God's light shine through you. So you're being held accountable, whether it's by another Christian brother or sister, whether it's by God, the Holy Spirit convicting you or whatever, but you're allowing yourself to be held accountable. So I'm taking ownership, and I'm being held accountable, and I'm being responsible. Responsible means that I am taking the appropriate actions to make it right. Plainly put, I'm going to deal with it. We're going to deal with this because I must be responsible in this matter. And so, my brothers and my sisters, when we find folk who are not willing to take ownership, not willing to be held accountable, not willing to be responsible, it's usually an indication of one of two things. Y'all want to know what it is? I wrote a sermon about it, like here it goes. The first thing is, it's usually an indication of their stubbornness. Yeah. There's a whole lot of stubborn folk. Stubborn folk who are set in their ways. Stubborn folk who, just like a mule who refuses to move. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, if that mule has made up in his mind he ain't going nowhere, guess what? He ain't going nowhere. And that's how some people are. That's how some people act in life. They're just stubborn as a mule. And they know they're wrong, but I'm being stubborn right now. And so I'm not gonna take ownership. Why? Because I'm stubborn. I'm not going to be held accountable. Why? Because I'm stubborn. And I'm not going to even be responsible. Why? You got it. Because you're stubborn. And so there they are, stubborn and stuck. And as a result, that relationship continues to be destroyed and or damaged and or dissolves. But not only is it those who are stubborn, there are those who are just downright selfish. Selfish. Do you realize there's a whole lot of selfish folk in this world? I know that's revelation to you today, you know, that folk are selfish, but yeah, folk can be and folk are very selfish. And not only are folks selfish, they can be very self-centered. And so when a person is selfish or when a person is stubborn, they are not going to move towards reconciliation. Why? Because they're selfish. It's all about me. So I'm not even thinking about the bigger picture, kingdom-wise. I'm not thinking about the friendship and the fellowship that we had. All I'm thinking about is me right now. And so since all I can think about is me, I'm not considering you. And since I'm not considering you, the heck with you. I was going to say something else, didn't I? Yeah. That's only on fourth Sunday. But the heck with you. So I'm good on you. You got folk that say it all day long. I'm good on them. I'm straight. Mm-hmm. So we write people off. And when we write people off, we end up allowing the enemy to take authority in our lives, and he's doing what he wanted to do in the first place. Do you know that one of the greatest strategies in war is divide and conquer? Divide and conquer. I sit back and I just rack my brain and I hit my head against the wall, as it were, when I just look at, all these little gang members and what have you over the years and whatnot, and hear me what I say and hear me clear, because I'm not advocating or promoting violence of any kind. But it just baffles me that instead of gang members uniting and going and fighting, folk who are trying to eliminate a certain race, KKK, white supremacists, instead of fighting against that, they fight one another. You got Bloods killing Crips, and Vice Lords killing disciples, and so on and so forth. And so I discovered and realized that I don't think I've ever heard of a Crip or a Blood that's ever killed a KKK member. But you hear Bloods killing Crips every day, all day long. Again, I'm not advocating violence and I'm not promoting that. That's not what I'm saying in this. All I'm saying is that when we turn on one another and take our focus off of those who are really attacking us, it doesn't make sense. And when folk get mad and have injustice, because of an injustice, and what they do is go tear up their own neighborhoods. Tear down the few stores that they do have. Tear down the few businesses that they do have, and what have you, and hurt the people that's been helping them, and now you got to go back and you got to rebuild. It doesn't make sense. And so the KKK, in the real sense, they sit back and just watch and say, y'all go right on ahead and keep on killing one another, because that means we ain't got to get our hands dirty. That means we ain't got to get no blood on our white sheets, as it were. We ain't got to do that. You're doing the dirty work for us. My brothers and my sisters, that's what the enemy, the real enemy, who is Satan, that's what he wants. He wants to divide and conquer and turn us against one another. So what you end up happening in your households is husbands against their wives, wives against their husbands, and they're fighting one another, and they're letting any and everything come in between them, and now the family is destroyed. And now you have brothers and sisters who are fighting one another, not even speaking to one another, living on two ends of the town, and you have a divided household. My brothers and my sisters, when it's all said and done, it boils down to stubbornness and selfishness. With your godly self. With your spiritual, pseudo-righteous self. Walking around here acting like you so spiritually high and so spiritually mature, but you stubborn. And you selfish. And you're letting the enemy use you and control you like a puppet. My God. So instead, what we ought to do, my brothers, we ought to look at the bigger picture and say, I'm not going to allow this to continue to happen. Not on my watch. You see, because what folk end up doing, instead of taking that responsibility and ownership and all that, this is what they end up doing. They do one of three things. They project, they deflect, and they reject. I hope y'all getting this. I'm almost done. Let me give it to you. Watch this. Let me explain. Let me unpack this. What they do is they project. Have you ever known someone who projects? What it means as in projecting is what it is they're taking their feelings, their experiences, their philosophy, their mindset, or whatever, and they're projecting it and or imposing it upon you. Yeah. And then there's some folk who end up deflecting. So when responsibility comes their way, or when they are being held accountable, or needing to be responsible, or take ownership, or whatever the case may be, they deflect. It's kind of like Captain America with his shield. Deflecting. Anytime a dart comes at, you're deflecting it. And so instead of it something sticking and then you taking responsibility and making it right and so on and so forth, you're just deflecting. That's all you do is go through our life deflecting. I'm deflecting it back upon you. I'm deflecting it off of me because I ain't taking ownership or responsibility or accountability. And or you end up rejecting it. When someone comes and brings it to your attention, you reject it. I ain't trying to hear that. Speak to the hand. Someone tries to tell you, now you know you was wrong. I don't want to hear all that. Don't come preaching to me. Can't nobody judge me but God. Well, yeah, that's right. And he will. So you better be mindful of what you're saying, because he will judge you. He will hold you accountable. So you have folk who project, you have folk who deflect, you have folk who reject. And when it all is done and said, it prevents God from doing what God wants to do. So as I close, I'm so glad that in this text, I know I thought I wasn't going to deal with the text no more. In the text, it says, but Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. These two brothers who have been at odds, Jacob decided, enough is enough. I'm not living in purpose. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. So I need to get my act together. I need to handle this. I need to make it right. And I need to go back where God, wants me to be. And it starts with me first making things right between my brother. It starts with me maturing. And me going to my brother and saying, brother, can we make it right? I was wrong. I take ownership for my part. I ain't going to talk about what you did. You did what you did. Let me first deal with me. I was wrong. Let's lay it out on the table. Let's discuss it. Let's deal with it. And let's see if we can move on and work past this and beyond this. And let's get in fellowship again. Let's become family again. Let's become friends again. It may take time. It may need some healing. It may be hard. It may be difficult. But because I value you and I value the relationship and I value and see the bigger picture, let's work on this. Can we please? And so when they are willing and receptive to the reconciliation, what happens is you see what we see in chapter 33. They said we're going to come together, and they end up coming head to head and seeing one another. And instead of them holding it against one another, and bringing back, what you did and all that carrying on, it wasn't none of that. The Bible says Esau ran, he met him, he embraced him, he fell on his neck, and he kissed him. If there were 3 points I would take from this text, is right here in the text. I ain't got to make up nothing. First of all, meet him. That's what I'm telling you when it comes to reconciliation, because some of y'all are saying, all right, Pastor, well, what are the steps to reconciliation? Well, here they are right here. Meet them. Meet them where they are on their terms, all right? And come to a common ground and what have you. Quit trying to, do the blame thing and all that. Meet them where they are. Try to understand where they are. Try to understand life from their perspective. Because there's always different perspectives. You see it a certain way, they see it a certain way. You hear things through the lenses of, you see things through your lenses and you hear things through your ears. It's through your context that you interpret what is presented to you. So try to take it out of, from your set of lenses and your ears and put yourself in their position and see if you can hear and see it from their perspective. So meet them where they are. Watch this. And greet them where they are. What do I mean by that? When I say greet them, what that simply means is when you go to them, there ought to be a pleasant disposition. There ought to be a pleasant attitude and demeanor. You ought not go with no attitude. You ought not go with you ought to go with the most humblest, the greatest sense of humility and really because you want this to work. So I'm not going defensive. I'm not going with my guns loaded. No, I want this to work. When you read this story, you'll see that Jacob presented all type of gifts and all this stuff that was sent before him so that when Esau would come, he would get all these gifts and he would know that his brother came in peace. But when they came back and told him, they said, oh yeah, we went and told Esau you was coming. That you wanted me. He said Esau's already on his way. He's got X amount of people with him and so on and so forth. Jacob got a little intimidated and afraid. He's like, oh my gosh, he's not going to receive me well. So my brothers and my sisters, you got to understand in a real sense that when you are going, you want to make it right. So when Jacob saw Esau, he said, what does all this mean? Why you got all these folk? Why you got all these people? And I'm going to read it to you right here. He says, in verse 8, it says, and Esau said, what do you mean by all this company which I met? And he said, these are to find favor in the sight of my Lord. He was thinking that he was coming to battle. He's like, man, I want peace between us so badly that, I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done. I'm send these gifts, I'm send this, peace offering, extend this olive branch and all that. He says, man, I don't want no beef. I want to resolve this. So when you go to meet your Esau, as it were, and to deal with it and to handle it, you're going with a disposition that is peaceful and you're humble because you want to make it right. And so if you're met with some degree of hostility, you want to make it right so badly, instead of meeting and matching hostility with hostility, you meet with humility. Yeah. Are y'all hearing me? Yeah. So meet them, greet them. But wait a minute. Not only that, kiss them. What it means to kiss them is, literal and or figurative. To kiss someone, to fall, he said he fell upon his neck, so that means they hugged. That means they embraced. And in them embracing and him kissing him, it was a sign of respect, hospitality, and honor, and so on and so forth. I'm not meeting you. How many times you go up and kiss your enemy? No, you kiss those who you are in harmony with or in peace with, or someone that you're meeting. It's a form of, just like in this country, many of us shake people's hands when we meet them. In certain areas of the world, people greet one another by a kiss on the cheek, sometimes on both cheeks. It is, it's a form of hospitality and courtesy and respect and so on and so forth. So when you meet them and when you greet them, kiss them. Show some form of respect and hospitality, not hostility. So that's how we deal with it, y'all. That's how we handle it. That's how we resolve these matters. Because there are relationships that will go sour and relationships that will go sour. And they can end up ultimately being dissolved, being destroyed, and or disrupt fellowship and disrupt friendship if you don't